Yo, what is going on, Comfy Gang? It's your boy, Comfy Neat, and if you're wondering why I'm lying down right now, it's because I want to get real comfy for this video topic, which I want to talk about, and that is the average, or I guess the typical NEET sleep schedule. So, I think sleep schedules are, I guess, pretty typical among most NEETs. And I feel like they evolve over certain stages, or maybe they don't, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself. But yeah, at least for me, or at least I feel like, maybe certain sleep patterns can indicate that one might be at risk for becoming NEET. And one of them is that you are a night owl. And I feel like typically, if you maybe, let's say, sleep, let's say from like 8 to 12 p.m. and wake up at like 6 to 8 a.m., I'd say that's like the typical normal sleep schedule for like the average working person, for the average student, for the average person who is able to fit into society. But then there are people who I guess are naturally born night owls or something, or whatever the reason is. I feel like it's definitely some sort of like indicator that they are predisposed to becoming NEET, because, some people say that, sleeping at late hours and waking late is a sign of intelligence. Maybe intelligent people are more likely to become NEET because, they're more likely to have Asperger's, or, obviously that's just a huge cope. Like, I don't know. That's definitely not it, but I feel like it definitely is indicative of some sort of predisposition. So anyways, I'm gonna speak for myself from now on. So I'd say around college, especially after I went to university, like I guess all that freedom kind of allowed me to fall into my natural sleep pattern, if you will. And that initially was probably around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., even 4 a.m., and then waking up at around, maybe 10 to 12 p.m., usually like pretty late, like 12 p.m., and then sometimes, that was my typical sleep schedule for a long time when I was still considered a normal functioning person in society, but no longer being controlled by my parents and having my sleep schedule sort of like warped, I guess, to their will. So I guess you could say it was like my authentic sleep schedule, if that makes sense. And I would sleep like this. But ever since becoming NEET, I initially stuck to that sleep schedule fairly consistently, maybe for like a few months, but eventually it would start to get later and later, like maybe from like 3 a.m. on average to maybe like 4 or 5 a.m. on average, and then waking up later and later. And then eventually I would start going to bed at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. No, I'd say around 6 a.m. And then, after that, like I would be sleeping pretty regularly for maybe like a week, every day at like 6 a.m. and waking up at like 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon. And, this would happen, and eventually I'd try and reset my sleep schedule. So I'd try and pull all-nighters and like try and fall asleep at like 9 p.m., like try and stay awake. And this worked for a while, especially while I was a younger NEET, but eventually it became harder and harder to stay awake, and I would eventually, fall asleep at maybe like 1 or 2 in the afternoon and wake up at maybe 4 or 5, and then I would try and, and then I'd be like, oh shit, I'd try to go to bed early, sometimes with the help of sleeping pills. And, initially, like sleeping pills, because, I had access to them because my dad was a physician, practicing physician, so we had like a stockpile of sleeping pills. But that's beside the point. Like, I had sleeping pills and they would work initially. Like, I would take them once and I'd fall asleep at like 9 p.m. I'd wake up at maybe 6 a.m. Because I was so fatigued from the previous night of pulling an all-nighter. So that would kind of work for a little bit, but then eventually I would sleep at a healthy time for maybe like a week or two, and then it would slowly start to push later and later, especially since at the time I was still playing a lot of online games with friends like League of Legends, and they were in the West Coast, and I might dox myself. Let's just say I was quite farther ahead in the time zone from them, so like late at a good time to game for them was like already pretty late, and then we would game for like 3 to 4 hours. So eventually my sleep schedule would naturally get pushed to 3 a.m. But even when I eventually lost contact with them, because this is kind of the kind of stuff I would do like while I was in university as well. But even when I lost contact, it was just like I would naturally be drawn or like just drift towards these later sleeping times, and eventually the cycle would repeat itself over and over again, and I would I would continue to sleep even later and later. And so let's say maybe around 6 7 a.m. 8 a.m. and wake up at like 3 4 5 p.m. and I'd try to reset my sleep schedule again, but then it would be less and less effective, and I would I would fall back into my old unhealthy sleeping patterns even faster and faster. And eventually at some point in the last like year, I'd say, of during my NEETdom, I'd say I crossed some critical threshold of messing up your sleep patterns, where eventually I don't know, I guess I feel like it's at this point in time where time started to lose all meaning for me as a NEET, where like the days would start to like blend to each other, and the weeks and everything, whatever, weeks and months, whatever, would like fly by. And that's because I would just basically start to sleep whenever. So my sleep schedule would sort of like shift, where it's like it would shift 1 to 2 hours every 2 or 3 weeks. So let's say I'd sleep from like 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. for like 3 weeks, and then it would be 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then 4 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then it would kind of like cycle around the clock, where it would get to points where I was like sleeping at maybe like 10 a.m. and waking up at like 5 p.m., 12 p.m. and waking up at 8 p.m. and then it would kind of cycle, and then I would get to like a healthy sleeping time, and during these healthy sleeping times, I would actually feel a lot better, a lot healthy, a lot more energized. But it would just feel like this endless cycle. And eventually, because of my insomnia and stuff, because during I wouldn't always sleep like 8 hours. Like sometimes it would be like maybe like 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours, depending on how bad my insomnia was, whether I was exercising or not. Because like while I was at the gym, I feel like I would sleep at least 1 to 2 hours more than usual. And then if I was like mentally stimulated, or like mentally like I guess doing something cognitively challenging, like I don't know, reading or like playing games or working on music, then I'd sleep better too. But eventually it got to the point where like I feel like my insomnia just kind of like is more related to like my mood swings, if anything, like my minor, I'm not going to say bipolar, I'm just going to say like like mood swings within like what's, I guess, considered normal, where like, sometimes you're down, sometimes you feel more like excited than usual. And yeah, so like when I was like in these excited periods, I would sleep a lot less. But I don't know, is it that I'm excited or is it something else? But it could be all in my head. But yeah, so eventually got to the point where like I would sleep 4 hours, and typically I would try and stay awake until like my previous sleeping time. But eventually it got to the point where I would just say F it. I would start to feel tired during the afternoon, and especially after eating, get that like postprandial, whatever it's called, that glucose spike and that energy dip. And I would just, at some point in time, I just stopped. I would, at one point I fell asleep once, and then, it made it more likely for me to fall asleep again during that time. And, eventually it got to the point where I would basically just sleep whenever I felt sleepy, even if it was after eating. And, that's where we are now. And I would say that's the evolution of my personal NEET schedule, but I would guess that it's pretty similar for most NEETs, or especially most mid-stage, late-stage NEETs. I don't want to know if it gets any worse than that. Hopefully it doesn't devolve even further where I'm like sleeping every 3 hours and waking like within like an hour of sleeping, some weird crap like that. Right now, I sleep anywhere from 1 to 2 times per day, depending on my mood. If I like get a good 8 hours of sleep, then I usually stay awake until the next sleep time. But sometimes when I have like insomnia, I sleep like 3-4 hours, 5 hours, and then I compensate for the lack of sleep instead of staying awake, and like by sleeping during the afternoon or something. And honestly, I feel a lot better doing that. Maybe it's better just to follow, your body's natural sleep rhythms, because I do feel a lot more rested. Who knows, maybe I'm the enlightened one. Maybe I'm the one with the actual proper sleep schedule, but who really knows? It at times certainly doesn't feel healthy. It doesn't feel healthy when you wake up, especially during the later hours. Like, you kind of feel like a doomer. You kind of feel like you're rotting, especially when you wake up at like 5 p.m. and it's 6 p.m. and it's already like dark outside, and you have to like turn on the lights because there's no more natural light, or you see that dusk, like the light from like dusk, pouring through the window, just like a hint of light, but it's already like pretty much dark. And yeah, it's pretty bad when you wake up and it's like pitch black and you have to turn on the light, like hit the light switch, or it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of light coming from like lighting up your room from outside, like from the hallway. And yeah, it's pretty crappy. But that is, I'd say, the evolution of the NEET sleep schedule, and at least as far as it goes for me. But I'm pretty sure a lot of NEETs can relate to this, so it's probably accurate for a lot of NEETs. I'm sure that there's some NEETs that manage to maintain like a pretty healthy sleep schedule, but I'd say the longer you stay a NEET, the harder and harder it becomes to, adhere to, the average NEET schedule, the average sleep schedule, which could be seen as sort of maybe a convention, a sort of societal expectation, if you will, meant to fit into the average like 9 to 5 work schedule. But who really knows? But yeah, as far as how that affects me, I don't really know. There must be some negative effects. And I would say probably one of the primary causes of me sleeping like this is just all the blue light from like staring at screens, like computer screens, like your phone screen, playing video games and being mentally stimulated probably makes it hard to sleep at that healthy sleep time. So obviously my sleep hygiene is pretty poor. I don't do things like drink a glass of milk or like tea or whatever, and do stretches and, you know, shut off all electronics before a certain time and like read a book maybe. I should definitely read more because I'm basically illiterate right now. That's besides the point. But yeah, these are all things that contribute to me, you know, not being able to sleep at like a set time and have my sleep schedule get pushed further and further just around the clock, and just has all sorts of negative effects, like me losing my sense of time and, you know, time accelerating. Maybe that's because of my sleep schedule, or maybe not, but who knows really. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say about my sleep schedule as a NEET. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this, and this is Comfy NEET signing out.